Hi everyone, I hope I'm live. I'm not quite sure. I'm using my phone today. It's a slightly different platform, but I'm going to assume I am. And if I am, that's great. If not, well, I'm just going to enjoy talking to myself. But anyway, welcome, if you can see me and hear me, to the Renovation and Outdoor Living Show. What is the date? 27th of November. Good to see you all. Friday, November the 27th. I'm now back in sunny Auckland for today's show. Last week I was in Hawke's Bay, beautiful Hawke's Bay. I would do this outside, and I tried to go outside to do the show, but with teenagers finishing exams at the moment and coming home during the week, they're blasting out music upstairs. It's too noisy in the garden. So I've come and hidden in front of some bizarre piece of art. There you go. But we're not going to talk about art today. What we are going to talk about is pantries, sculleries, places to store food and appliances so they don't clutter up our beautiful newly renovated kitchens. But before we get to that, just a quick reminder of what we did last week. So last week we were talking toilets with Mark Little from Robertson Bathware. He told us all about the latest in toilet tech, and in particular two products. One was a rimless toilet. This is the new thing, so they're much easier. So you can just wipe them clean. So they're far more hygienic. They're far easier to clean. And the other product, this is amazing, is that bidets have made a comeback. But nowadays you don't buy a separate, sort of bowl and put it on the wall, a pan and put it on the wall next to your toilet. Now it's all integrated. So there's a button sort of panel attached to your toilet, and you press the button, and your toilet becomes, jets of water and things, and becomes a bidet. And apparently it's the latest cool thing. We also talked about the practicalities, or the basic requirements when you're installing a toilet, what you have to consider regarding plumbing, what you have to consider regarding your wall cavities, and the actual space you need for a toilet to be operational. And then Mark finished by giving us a toilet to give away, one of these rimless ones I just told you about. I'll tell you more about that. If you haven't entered that, how you can go into the draw to win that. It's about $1,000 worth of toilets, so well worth it. So today, as I mentioned, it's all about sculleries, butlers' pantries, and moreover, what you need to consider when you're planning one. And you're best to start off by talking to a designer, which is why we're talking again to Kristen Reed, who operates her own design business in Rangiora. She's also the head designer for Mastercraft Kitchens. That's across the country, so she knows what she's talking about. Also, now I'm hoping Kristen. Hi, Kristen. So you've also built 4 homes, and I know we've talked about this before. So you've learned, you've lived this, you've sweated this yourself many times.
Yeah, I have, and I love building. It's what I do and what my husband does. So yeah, quite into it. But in saying that, I've not actually ever built a scullery for my own home. So I've put them everywhere else, but personally not for myself yet. But it is on the plan of things to do in the future. So yeah,
okay. So you're in North Canterbury. You're in the 4th home which you built. You're living there at the moment. Apart from the fact you've got you've got a youngster, and I've just been told another one on the way. So congratulations. Does this mean you have to build another new home so you can put a scullery in?
Yeah, I think we've always been for our own homes. Since building our first home together, which was quite big, since then for our own homes, we've actually stuck to the smaller living, so small homes and less cleaning, because we both work so much. But now that we're going to have 2 children, I think we need a bigger home. And I do like the idea of a scullery because I think a lot of New Zealanders since COVID are going back to basics. I really love the idea of learning how to preserve and keep food in a cool, dark place, and that kind of thing. So that's my main driving point. And I see beautiful images like this too, where it's all, you can have a beautiful kitchen, all uncluttered and nice and display, and it always looks lovely when people come over, and hidden away is all the food storage, all the appliances set up all the time, and yeah.
It's interesting, Kristen, what you said, because this is about lifestyle change, which COVID has taught us, a lot of us, to say, actually, let's start using our kitchens as we used to, because it's about changing lifestyles. I mean, if you look back to the origins of the scullery or the pantry, your walk-in pantry or your larder, it was all about having special rooms to do certain food prep, wasn't it? And yet, because we've sort of now we go smaller and smaller and smaller, we need the space to live in. So we've got rid of all that. And now you're finding that this is coming back. Is that what clients are saying to you? We want to be able to have a space to do this.
Yes, they are. And people have been saying that to me for years. I mean, a lot of new homes, a lot of the plans I do for Mastercraft are for it's all new build, the plans that they do a lot of for group housing and things, and they almost all have sculleries now, or pantries at least, so that you've got that space to have a few appliances set up on the bench and have lots of open shelving for that food storage, and to keep the kitchen uncluttered and open, and because it's generally always open plan in Kiwi living, isn't it? So to have that space where you can keep the unsightly things like the toaster and all, your baked beans, having them easy access. I think that's really important to New Zealand families today that are building and renovating.
So, and you started that when you were just chatting then by saying a scullery or a pantry. I mean, is there a difference? What is the difference? I mean, can you explain? I mean, it seems to me that they're both rooms you walk into.
Yeah, so a scullery is typically has a sink and often a dishwasher for cleanup, and it's generally a bigger space. So a scullery would generally be at least 1,500 millimeters deep, or 1.5 meters deep. So you've got enough room to stand in the space and comfortably do prep and clean up and have appliances. So it's rather than a room where you, so the picture shows it beautifully, where you've got a clear prep space, clean up, easy access storage, whereas a pantry would be a smaller space, pretty much all open shelving, and generally no sink. So there wouldn't be a sink in just a pantry, and it wouldn't be as comfortable to do food prep, although people would. So you could easily, in this picture, make a cup of coffee, but you probably wouldn't want to get stuck into your baking for a long period of time, or do your preserves in there or anything like that, because you don't have those facilities for easy cleanup and your fridge storage and all that kind of thing in there. So that's really the key difference.
Yeah, so pantries really are just a lot smaller. They're really all about storage, practical space for storage, which you can access and shut off, whereas a scullery you're actually going to do stuff in. And so that's what's so interesting. So now my question then is and where does a larder come into that? A larder is that a cupboard?
Yeah. I mean, depending on what country you're in, but a larder, if someone said, I want a nice larder, I would think a really well-appointed pantry space that actually sits within your kitchen, so within the footprint of the kitchen. That's how I personally interpret that. However, I haven't Googled it, so probably something I should do. But I would interpret it. We do that a lot as well. So like a walk-up pantry without the standing space. So you've got doors that cover your pantry and your bench and your prep, but you close it and you're actually still standing in your kitchen footprint.
Yeah, so that's about much more of the sort of space saving, being able to tidy it away just with cupboard space, which is a really good, effective design in itself. But let's go back to this, where you've got an entire room which you can hide. I mean, this is a stunning kitchen. It's just beautiful, isn't it? But now, when I said to you, you're going to have to build a new home if you want a scullery, because you have to plan ahead for this. You can't suddenly say, oh, let's just rearrange things, or can you?
It really depends on the plan and the house and the footprint of the current kitchen. I get a lot of renovation work here in Rangiora where they want to add a scullery or at least a pantry, and often it can be done. It just takes a bit of thought, but at the very least, a walk-in pantry is, and a decent-sized kitchen footprint is definitely achievable.
Mm. It's interesting because we're seeing some again, this is another stunning design, but it's probably a bit like Rangiora. There's probably places which have got a little bit more space. I'm sitting here in central Auckland, where we know that to buy a thimbleful of land, you've got to have $20 million. So space is at a premium. Are we now compromising the sizes of our kitchens to incorporate something like a scullery? Are we actually rethinking about our kitchens because this is becoming such an important feature?
Yeah, it's definitely depending on the person, depending on the family and how they operate. But yes, I'm finding personally a lot of our clients would rather have a smaller, more compact, user-friendly kitchen and have a bigger pantry workspace, so that they can keep, the kids' school lunch prep and everything just out of the way. And then when people come over, you just close that cavity slider door or whatever door you've got over that space, and the mess is contained. So that has become very important to people over the years. Yeah.
And it's interesting because most of the time people have gone to, as we've used kitchens more and more, we've ended up putting 2 sinks in the kitchen. So you may as well put one of them into your scullery. Would you also move things like your dishwasher into the scullery? I mean, would you try? I mean, how much stuff would you try and get rid of?
So I haven't sort of struck that situation where they're moving the dishwasher into the scullery. More so because appliances, are probably much more affordable than they used to be. You can different grades. They're often putting like a secondary dishwasher that maybe not as flash as their kitchen dishwasher in the scullery, just so they can just pop, the couple of utensils or knives or forks that they've used for prep in there, or the glasses or whatever they've used, and still have their kitchen dishwasher ready to go for when they're actually doing like a full meal out there in the kitchen.
Yeah, and I saw that last picture also had the fridge freezer in there, because we all have 2 fridge freezers, don't we? Because we just need more space to store stuff and more freezer space. And it's all about having cold beer, isn't it? Cold wine. So again, brilliant way to hide your second fridge rather than it sort of taking up your laundry.
Yeah, and if not a full-size fridge, the bar fridge is really popular to put into a pantry or scullery, just for that extra wee bit of space. And it is handy too, if it's a big enough space that you've got your sink and a dishwasher, having a fridge there, so if you want to make your cups of coffee, or it's really like popular to have a hot tap in the scullery or a multi-tap rather than a jug. So to have your milk just there too, that's really handy. So you're not sort of going back and forth. It's really important to get the flow right when you have a scullery, so you're not constantly going from one room to the other trying to do a simple task like make a cup of tea or that kind of thing. It needs to be in close proximity or well thought out so that you don't have to do that.
And that's a really good point, though, isn't it? And that's where you come in. So you'll sit down maybe with you. So you might have a client, or you might be talking to your renovations team, and between you, you're all going to you start off by actually identifying the particular needs of that client.
Yeah, that's where our Mastercraft designers are heavily trained. That we ask the questions that suit each individual family, like it's custom made, so it needs to work for that family. So what would work for one, you'd ask the next client and they say, I don't actually drink many hot drinks. I don't have cups of tea all day long, or we don't. So you wouldn't, the layout would change depending on that. Or I'm drinking hot cups of tea all day. So you maybe wouldn't want them going into the scullery for that. It depends on how they live and work, and maybe they work from home. Those sorts of things all need to come into account when planning a kitchen.
Yeah, and also, I mean, like things where, like, some people might like to have the wine on display in their kitchen. Others might like to have it tucked away. I've seen quite a few of them have got your wine storage tucked away in your scullery as well, or you're in your butler's pantry. I'm still, yeah, no, I think I have got the difference. But what else do you need to consider when you're, it's, I mean, do you find that often it's about taking over another room in the house, or do you find that you can, as I was saying, you can make a kitchen smaller by building a false wall or building a false room inside the kitchen as such?
Yeah, so if it's a renovation, it really depends on the house, but that's what you need to consider is what's going to be compromised in order to achieve that, and whether it's worth it. Because if it's going to be too bulky and compromise too many spaces beyond that, you may be better off looking at more accessible pantry storage in your kitchen. So those are the things you need to consider. But within those spaces, you need to think about how the lighting is going to be. Make sure there's enough task lighting. LEDs in the base of the overheads is really good, often on the sensor, so that when you walk in, the space is well lit. It'll make it easier to work in that space. Or whether there could be a window or a skylight to add light to that space. If the room is too dark and uninviting, it will be unused. Those are the things that are really important to think about prior to committing to a walk-in pantry or a scullery, is how it's going to be used. And
See, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you just mentioned light. Because often these will be you're right, they won't have natural light, because there might be a sort of a large cupboard which has been created at the back of the kitchen. So and you're so right, if you haven't got the light right, you're not going to use the space, are you?
No, you're not going to want to go and bake in a cupboard where you feel it's dark and you can't see. And so that's really important. And also having think about what you're going to put in there, whether you needs to be all open above the bench so everything's accessible, or whether that's going to be too easily seen from your living spaces. and it's going to look untidy. So whether you put doors over, all of those things need to be taken into consideration before you start your manufacture.
And this is really important when you say you sit down with your team, or you know, your Mastercraft team sits down and they've got their checklist of questions they ask. Because if you came into my house and you said, one of those questions I'm sure would be, what is the clutter? What is the mess which you don't want to have in your kitchen anymore? And my first answer would be, computers are lying around, phones are charging, and that's taking up all of our bench space. And I'm sure that this is probably a really, is this the new use for Scullery, to hide all your tech?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Actually, we do what we call tech stations in Sculleries a lot. So they're USB ports. Sometimes they're in the back of a drawer. So you've got a top drawer and you can have all your iPads and iPhones charging in a drawer in the Scullery overnight. But yeah, the tech station and charging docking stations in Sculleries have become really popular. People don't want to see that on the bench. There are a lot of homes I go into to renovate. They'll have the phone jack and everything on the corner of the breakfast bar return. And the first thing they say to me is, we've got to move that. And it's like, yeah, it looks cluttered and messy, and you see the wires and all that kind of thing. And it's, it's nice to have that clear, uninterrupted bench space and have that all hidden away.
That's a genius idea, what you were saying about not only hiding it away in the room, but hiding it away in a big drawer, so that with probably a row of, or a column of USB ports. That is a great idea. You should actually use that idea, Kristen, in your designs, and you can have that idea for free from me. I think that's brilliant.
Awesome. Cool.
No, that's really good. It is though, I was thinking about the space thing. It's a really big call though, isn't it? As you were just saying, to give over a room to a scullery. But then let's be honest, how often do you use maybe the little study or the little spare room which backs onto the kitchen? Whereas the scullery you are going to use every single day, aren't you? So it's got to be worth the space.
Yeah, something else to consider. We're finding we're doing a lot, especially, I don't know about up north, but down here is becoming really popular, is a combined laundry scullery situation. So you'd have your washer dryer stacked in a cupboard, and then the rest of it, so you'd have a shared tub. So you'd still have a wash tub in there, and the rest would be scullery. So it's usually more integrated, so you wouldn't have as many open shelves and whatnot, but you're sharing that space. So when I think about both of my sets of grandparents, they actually kept their preserves and whatnot in their laundry back then, because sculleries weren't a thing. So I guess it is kind of drawing from that, one space, two options, because you don't really spend much time in the laundry. So combining those spaces has been really popular down here.
That makes a lot of sense.
Both worlds.
Yeah, and also given the fact that to be a good laundry, it's going to have a sink in it anyway. And as you've just said, that's a sink which you might use once every 2 days or so. What a complete waste of space. Whereas if you've got a sink in the scullery and you've got your laundry stack there, you're going to use it every day. So that's another brilliant idea of mine, to integrate the laundry. That's good. Hey, look, Kristen, thank you so much for giving us some time today. I think this is just all about people having a few ideas. If you're watching and you're about to get into a renovation of a kitchen or something, or these are the things you should think about right now. Here you go. Here's your website, www.mastercraft.co.nz. If you jump on there, and you can always ask to speak to Kristen, who, as I said, because as the head designer, do all the design requests come through to you?
No, they don't. No. So when you go online, you will be directed to your local Mastercraft licensee, and there's so many throughout the country. There's bound to be one near you. So and all the designers who I've met, a lot of them, they're all fantastic. But any questions, of course, if they type them down under this video, I will be online, so I can answer any questions in the meantime.
Good idea. It's probably quite a good thing that you don't have to deal with every single design request, because you have nearly 2 tiny children and you've got a 5th house to build with a scullery.
yeah, definitely with a scullery.
So I'll look forward to you explaining to your partner that you've committed on a live webinar to taking on a new project.
I know, he doesn't know about this yet, so.
No.
Yeah.
Hey, good on you. Hey, Kristen, thanks so much for giving us the time. You look after yourself. I don't know if we'll see you again this year. We'll see you next year, though, when life's going to get busy. So best of luck for March. Have a great summer, and thanks very much for giving us some time.
Thank you. Thanks.
No worries. Awesome. So that's that was really interesting. So I had a wee look at this idea of scullery. So Kristen actually did explain it perfectly in the idea that scullery's got to be a bit bigger than a pantry, which maybe is just. But scullery comes from a French word or Latin word, scutella, meaning salver or dish stand. Okay, so this is in the days of so scullery comes from dishes, okay, because in the servant hierarchy of the big houses, you think about your Downton Abbeys or whatever, the scullery maid was very much the lowest of the low. Her job, it was always a her, was to basically just clean, because the scullery is where all the dishes got put, and sometimes they might have had a special silver scullery just to clean the silver, but the scullery was, so the scullery maid was the person who had to clean all the dishes, and that was her, hence the fact it has a sink in, which is exactly what Kristen just basically said. That's the big difference. And if you think about those days, even back to medieval days, way back then, they had separate rooms for each function. And this is why we had pantries, because pantry, the word pantry comes from the word pain, which is French for bread. So the pantry is where bread was kept and food preparation associated with bread was done. There was a room for meats, was the larder. Alcoholic drinks was called the buttery, because of the butts of the barrels would be stored there. And then, of course, there was the kitchen for cooking. So there you go. That's the background to the scullery versus pantry, whys and larder, what's which and which is why. I hope that gives you a little bit of information. Right, I want to give away this toilet next week, okay? But to win it, this is the Heron Hygiene Rimless Toilet Suite worth $1,000 or $999. Robertson Bathware gave it to us last week. In a nod to World Toilet Day, which was last week, which of course you knew. And we want to give this away next week. To go into the draw to win this, you've got to like our page and tell us, when was Robertson Bathware founded? All right, it won't take you very long to find out. We're going to announce the winner next Friday on who's won that $1,000 worth of rimless toilet. Fantastic prize, one of our best yet. So to round off this Friday, our top 10. Our top 10 is, we did stairways last week, we're doing doors today, and there's some cool stuff in here. So get a few design tips on this one. Maybe you want a Hobbit door. Number 10, this is a Lord of the Rings inspired Hobbit door. Not very practical, to be honest, because you have to stoop to get in and you probably trip over the thing. But this one, though, the next one, number 9, this is incredible. And oh, look at that. That is a copper front door. Isn't that absolutely stunning? No, it's not just a really, really small person. It's a really, really big door. At number 8, we've got a bamboo villa with a revolving style door. This is in the Indonesian jungle. What an amazing bit of engineering that is. Number 7, this glass door blending into the rock face around it. You see quite a lot of these in castles and things in Europe, which have been restored, and they're using the spaces, and where they used to just be these archways, they now put these really cool glass doors in, because of course an archway is a weird shape. So somebody's come up with this brilliant way of hinging it just to one side on a pivot. So there you go, it sort of explains itself in the picture. Number 6, a collection of Eastern European doors. Classic postcard when you're traveling around Eastern Europe or the Middle East, and full of life, art and color. I want to show you the number 5, this Parisian door. Pretty well known. This is Art Nouveau, built in 1901. One of the many hidden gems you find as you wander through the city of Paris. At number 4, we've got a front door from Greece. Iconic, isn't it? Santorini, the island of Santorini, which is all white with blue doors, etc. Beautiful, and black sand, funny enough. So that's in Greece, the color palette used in Santorini. And at number 3, this gorgeous stained glass villa door. Guess where that is? Yep, that's from little old New Zealand. That's a classic villa door from here, familiar sight scattered across the country. At number 2, we've got this steel and glass front door. You've got to be a little bit careful what you do behind that door, because quite honestly, anyone walking past is going to be able to see what you're doing. And number 1, well, it's almost December, isn't it? Next week is December, so we've given you a Christmas-themed front door to get everyone into the spirit of Christmas. We'll talk more about Christmas next week, the week after, and the week after probably. But for now, have a great weekend. Thanks very much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.